Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, welcome.
Senator.
Thank you for your testimony, and thank you for your service as well. Let's cover a number of topics. Let's start with Nord Stream 2. You and I have worked for some time on Nord Stream 2 and stopping the completion of that pipeline. As you know, over a year ago, I joined with Senator Shaheen in passing bipartisan legislation, went through both houses of Congress with overwhelming bicameral bipartisan support, imposing significant sanctions on companies that participated in laying the pipeline of Nord Stream 2. The president signed that legislation around 7 p.m., if I remember correctly, on a Thursday, and 15 minutes before that, his signature was on the page. The Swiss company that was laying the pipeline announced they were immediately ceasing all pipeline construction activities, so that those sanctions worked. Russia has not stopped. They have a pipeline that is 90 to 95% complete. Now, the good thing about a pipeline is a pipeline that is 95% complete is a pipeline that is 0% complete because it ain't transmitting anything till they connect the two ends. It is my intention that they never complete this pipeline. Both Russia and Germany continue to press forward aggressively to try to find ways to complete this pipeline. As you know, Senator Shaheen and I, again, introduced even stronger sanctions to any companies involved in any way whatsoever with the construction of the pipeline. Those stronger sanctions were included in the NDAA that passed this body with overwhelming bipartisan support just last week. And so I'm hopeful as the NDAA moves forward that we will have those stronger sanctions in effect. At the same time, you made an important decision within the State Department. Under CATSA, the administration has the authority, I believe, to sanction companies working to build this pipeline. Your predecessor, Secretary Tillerson, had issued, as I understand it, a guidance that was widely interpreted as essentially exempting Nord Stream 2. And you made the right decision to rescind that guidance. Can you explain to the committee the importance of that guidance and what authority the administration has right now today, with no additional legislation, to sanction any company, any German company, any other company that participates in any way with completing this pipeline?
Yep. So thanks, Senator Cruz. The president made that decision to change that language. It was my recommendation, so I'm not walking away from it. But I want to make sure everybody knew the president was fully on board with that. That change. That language was important because, to your point, and this is a little bit too simple, but it was essentially a get-out-of-jail-free card for those conducting activities surrounding Nord Stream 2. That's no longer true, and both the State Department and the Department of Treasury have made very clear in our conversations with those who have equipment there, and we can see that they're responding, as are their insurers, their board of directors, their lawyers, all understand the express threat that is posed to them for continuing to work on completion of the pipeline, and we remain hopeful that those who have the capacity to finish this pipeline quickly won't be able to do so. They'll choose not to because of these sanctions. And then we have the task of those that are harder to reach by sanctions, making sure that we do everything we can to stop them. The president's been so clear about the security threat that the Nord Stream 2 pipeline poses to Europe. We've not been able to convince the Germans of that. So we're taking action ourselves to try and accomplish that, to preserve security for the European people.
So, Secretary Pompeo, I know you care about this issue. I spent about 6 hours with the president yesterday in Air Force One, and Nord Stream 2 came up in considerable depth, as did the president's frustrations with the leadership of Germany. Let me point out that the State Department has a long tradition of sometimes obscure speech, perhaps rivaled only by the Federal Reserve. This is an issue in which ambiguity is not beneficial. And as you know, the Russians are actively pushing disinformation, that there are not going to be sanctions for anyone involved in this pipeline. The Russians actively push disinformation that the bipartisan legislation I had introduced previously was not going to pass. That was wrong.
I remember that.
And we had overwhelming bipartisan support that passed it into law. And so I would encourage, I believe under CATSA you have full legal authority right now to make clear and explicitly clear to anyone involved with constructing this pipeline that the consequences of doing so are catastrophic and not worth doing. And so I would encourage the State Department, and I recognize you work within an administration, and there may be other agencies that have different views, but if there are, those other agencies aren't right in this matter. And so I urge you to speak with absolute clarity, because it is only that clarity, I think, that has any prayer of actually stopping the completion of this pipeline. And if the pipeline is completed, it will do serious damages to the economic interest and the national security interest of Europe. It will do serious damage to the economic and national security interest of the United States, and it will benefit Putin and put billions of dollars in his pocket.
There's no need for ambiguity. The president hasn't been ambiguous about this at all. There was a reason that we made the change in that language, essentially the waiver language, if you will. We're fully intent of sanctioning those that violate the provisions that are contained there, both in CATS and otherwise.
Thank you. That's helpful. Let's shift to another area.
I hope that's clear enough.
That last statement had substantially greater clarity, and so I am grateful and look forward to amplifying it loudly.
Thank you, Senator.
Let's shift to another topic that you and I have also discussed at length, which is Iran snapback. I believe maximum pressure should be maximum pressure, that the Iranian regime, the Ayatollah, when he says death to America, that he means it, that when he says death to Israel, that he means it, under the terms of the Obama-Iran nuclear deal and the UN Security Council resolution implementing it. The United States has the authority to invoke snapback sanctions if and when Iran is in violation of the deal. We have that authority even though we have withdrawn from that deal. Iran is now nakedly, openly, flagrantly flouting the deal. They're not pretending to comply with it. It is obvious they are defying it, and they're telling us they're defying it. Will the United States invoke the snapback sanctions, which would result in reimposing not just American sanctions, but far broader sanctions on Iran for their violations of the deal?
I think the president's been very clear. We believe we have this authority. I've spoken to this a couple of times. We believe that under UN Security Council Resolution 2231, we clearly have the authority to do this, and that we are not going to permit this arms embargo to expire on October 18th. We're going to introduce a UN Security Council resolution we hope will be met with approval from the other members of the P5. In the event that it's not, we're going to take the action necessary to ensure that this arms embargo doesn't expire. We have the capacity to execute snapback, and we're going to use it in a way that protects and defends America.
Thank you.